Set. Go.
Is this thing on, Cannon?
It better be.
Where's your line at, dude? You always follow me up there.
Sorry, dude. I forgot it.
You forgot.
You forgot it already.
It has been a long day. I can never get enough for you.
Are you toothless, Kanan? First, let me ask. Are you toothless?
Not, but I probably will be here soon.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. You're taking the role of being on Hillbilly Broadcast very seriously.
Like, he is going to be a real
Get
West
rid
Virginia.
As many teeth as you can.
Yes.
Dude.
He has very strong teeth.
Yeah.
You got some very strong teeth,
Knowing
huh?
all those bodies and whatnot, you know?
Not you cannibal. Kanan the cannibal.
Giggity.
Gee whiz.
No, it's actually all good. They just said I just need really a cleaning, honestly, so we're good.
You don't clean your teeth?
That's kid stuff, man.
Once a month, you know.
While your wife takes her bi-weekly shower?
Exactly.
And you hate on people.
I am. I'm loaded right now.
Maybe you should clarify that.
I was just like, not money-wise. Yeah, definitely not money. I am
There's
not
a certain
a millionaire.
Pentecostal dude don't care for that conversation we had there.
Right.
I forgot about him. I should.
What's wrong?
That might be another. We don't want to get into that can of worms right now. Nah, remember that dude? Yeah, let's just move on. Let's move on.
You really don't want to talk about this.
Nah,
Let me just say, I was hoping my girlfriend shaved her legs. I was getting tired of them being hairy.
What are you doing? You understand? Y'all understand why I'm nervous?
Yes.
You see, this is the beginning.
I'm just living up to her reputation.
I'm actually sweating a little more than usual myself.
So let me just paint the picture here. So we've got
completely sober.
Oh man.
So we've got a guest on. We got maybe a quiet guest. Let me just put it that way as well. And then the one
I have a silent listener.
Our interviewee?
Yes.
See, I'm nervous. Tonight is a pastor as well. So we are really.
We have to be on our best behavior here.
Kanan,
we really got to behave.
Yes. Don't send a podcast.
Okay, so y'all need to know that I was born and raised in the mountains of South Carolina. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little more comfortable.
For sure.
At least we ain't dealing with no Yankees
in
at the
the
moment.
mountains of South Carolina.
Yeah.
So
now we're talking.
Born and bred Southern girl, so I'm not scared of any of your conversation.
Okay. Because we are a little redneck. We're a little bit, what was the word? Hick? Was that someone they called West Virginia a hick? Who was having that conversation?
Your dad was having a conversation. I don't know who.
He offended
I'm not even sure
someone.
there was another guy involved. I think it was just your dad talking to himself.
Yeah. Said that we were hicks.
Something like that, yeah.
I actually got called one. They said that I
didn't know it was bad to be called.
I didn't know it was bad either. Like it. But someone up in New Jersey, they were telling us, "Hey, yeah, you hicks down there in West Virginia," and I was like, "Okay." I didn't realize that was a thing to call us hicks.
Let's go ahead and jump into this because I'm really been looking forward to the interview tonight. It's taken me forever to put it, and it's purely on my fault. I finally discovered that it might be a little more. It might be better if I start scheduling things in advance instead of just being like, "Hey, somebody want to be on the podcast this week?" so
People don't just randomly show up. They don't just randomly call. It don't work that way.
No, we're not quite that popular.
Not yet.
So, guest tonight we have Tracy Bowen. And the way I remember that I was talking about rednecks bow hunting. I remember because you never can tell, man.
Like bow and arrow, like she said.
Tracy Bowen, her and her husband.
You should have known right there when I was talking about the bow and arrow that that I had some kind of yeah.
Well, let's not kid ourselves. That accent don't exactly mask where you're from either, Tracy.
So I live in Florida now, and I have people all the time say to me, "Where in the world did you get that accent from?" Because I know you're not from here.
Yeah.
So let me tell you a funny story real quick. So a few years ago, I'd worked a 12-hour shift at the job that I was at that time. And I got home late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. My hands were full, and I was walking up to the door of our house, and there was a rattlesnake curled up right in front of our door.
Oh, no.
And so I quick thought, like, I have kids. He has to die. So I put my foot on his neck, and I tapped on the door with my elbow. It was the only free thing I had. And one of the kids opened the door, and I stuck my head in the door, and I said, "Babe, you got to bring me a knife." And he's like, "What?" My husband's in there going, "What in the world?" I said, "You got to bring me a knife." So he comes out the front door. Now, y'all need to know that my husband, God love him, he is a very manly man, but snakes terrify the life out of him. So when he looked down and saw, because the snake had wrapped the rest of his body around my leg once I put my foot on his head, so the snake just wrapped around my leg, and I was wearing shorts and sandals. So he looks down and sees that snake, and he almost died. God love him. And I said, "Honey," I said, "You see half of his head's hanging out right here on the other side of my foot. You just have to cut his head off. Just cut his head off." Okay. So he cut his head off. Okay. So my husband is telling this story a few days later to a group of people, and I didn't know it. I walked up right after the story had been told. And one of the people looked at me and said, "Did you really do that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I was born and raised in the mountains of South Carolina." He said, "I knew it. I knew it. There ain't no South Florida girl who would put their foot on the head of a snake. I knew you were not from around here." So I am in Florida now, but this is not where I've always been. I'm a country girl.
So what is Florida? Kanan, you got some experience down there too. So I'm curious. Is it like transplants then? I mean, how come they don't have like the deep South reputation that like South Carolina and Georgia and all that does?
It really is a melting pot, especially South Florida, which is where we're at. But we're actually inland just a little bit where I'm at. And so most people have this idea of Florida as Disneyland or beaches. Mm-hmm. But Midland, Florida, the middle of the state, is nothing but ranches. And so where we're at, it's a cow town, and it is cowboys. Legit cowboys. You walk into stores, and they've got their spurs and their boots, and there's ranches everywhere. There's cattle everywhere. It's just, as far as you can see, just country. And so the middle of Florida does have very distinct landscape that is not what people picture in their head when they're thinking about Florida. So I actually fit in here pretty good because you have to be a little bit of country to be right here. So yeah, South Florida is a melting pot in general of just everything you can imagine. So
where you're at, is that where all the Florida man stories that I see on Fox News come from?
It's true. It's true. So I'm actually, we live near Lake Okeechobee, and it's full of alligators, just absolutely full of alligators. And there was a guy just a few years ago was like, dared to swim out to a pier or out to a buoy in the water, with tons of gators everywhere. And he had one or two too many, and he jumped in and swam out there and came back minus an arm. So it was a little bit lighter swim coming back. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, those things happen here.
Gee whiz.
Wow.
Gee whiz. I thought West Virginia was wild. Y'all crazy down there.
Oh.
Yeah, it's very. There's actually a lot of very country folks down there. Honestly, rednecks. If you get out just outside of like Hope Sound area a little ways, you'll start finding people that look like they came off like Brookback. But I mean Yellowstone.
Oh, Kanan, that was good.
So you're saying not everybody looks like Rush Limbaugh down there is what you're trying to say?
No, it's man.
Oh my goodness.
It's really cool though. I enjoyed it a lot.
What is that close to where your brother is? He's on the other side.
I got a brother in is it Titusville?
I thought it was Titusville.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Titusville. So that's, I don't know, probably about 3 hours up the coast from here. That's getting closer to Georgia.
I think I literally know nothing about Florida.
Yeah, I don't know anything.
But let's move on. Let me finish this introduction. So Tracy, you and your husband are campus pastors at Christ Fellowship in Okeechobee, Florida. Which you told me was a very, very big church. Now, if people's wondering why Tracy's here, because she grew up like we did, and we all like we did.
I'm very interested to hear this.
Yes, in the Amish light. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Oh no.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I should be nice enough. So yeah, I
We
think
weren't that bad.
yeah, it wasn't quite that bad. Now the Bible Missionary Church where Miss was at, that's a whole different story. But
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Well,
so what denomination did you grow up from, Tracy?
So the little church that I attended growing up was non-denominational. My grandfather started it because he had gotten upset at actually his own brother was the pastor of another little holiness church there, and they got into some little feud about something, and so my grandfather went over and started his own little church, and that's the church that I grew up in.
Good reason to start a church, I guess.
Yes.
That's how they start.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned as well that this is, you're on the pastor's staff, or you and your, so are you and your husband, are you like the main pastors at this? Because you said it's a campus pastor, so this is like a separate location, I'm guessing, from like the main campus.
Okay, so
maybe explain that to me.
I don't know if you're familiar with the term multi-site. So imagine, so the main hub of our church, I would say the main, and it was the original church, kind of like where the church started and it grew from there, is in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And we have, oh my goodness, I don't even know, 13 maybe other campuses besides that now.
Wow.
I don't know. It may actually be more than that. I kind of lost count. But it's so every single site has its own leaders. And so at our particular site, we would be the leaders of our site, but we're not the leaders of the church. We would fall underneath the leaders at Palm Beach Gardens. They're the lead pastors of the church.
I see.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but that's kind of how it functions. So the way we describe it is one house, many rooms. So
yeah, I like that. That seems reasonable enough.
Yeah, because like when you're saying campus, in my head, I'm thinking like college or something like that. But it's not that at all, right?
No, it's a full-on church. Like we just call it a church campus because we've got multiple buildings and that kind of thing. So it's just the property where our church exists.
Gotcha.
Is the Okeechobee campus of Christ Fellowship. So yeah.
Okay.
Kana, maybe you can help me out on this here. It seems like at what point, there was a point, I don't know what the line was, but at some point, if a holiness church, a church could only get so big before somehow the devil automatically came inside of it and it was just all over. So, like multiple campuses was never, like it was off limits. Well, we don't know why, but it was.
Well, man, they couldn't grow one church. How did they think they're going to grow multiple? I don't say that to be mean either. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
So I think that probably the original thought that I shared with you about how the church that I grew up started because somebody got upset with somebody else. And so I think a lot of that has happened within holiness circles. And so nobody's ever gotten a chance to even grow big enough to decide like what we would do.
That's a very good
because
point.
there has been a lot of fracture because eventually everybody wants their piece of control. It's really built on control, and so this person is like, oh, wait a minute, I want to have my say in this. And so they pulled their direction. And so, yeah, it just kind of ends up a really fractured mess.
I remember hearing someone asking like, why are there so many groups, or why do people end up going back to the group? Let me just say that. And usually it's because they like that control. Because I had a guy friend, he had left the BMC church and he went back and he's done well for himself. He's got some money. And I was like, yeah, you would go back there where women are considered second rate and children are supposed to keep quiet in church and women are supposed to keep quiet in church. So there's 2/3 of your group right there told to be quiet. And so, of course, you're going to have men, like a small number of men, because usually men are not really big in the church movement. My child
Anderson agrees with you there.
Yes, he's upset. He's upset about that. But
as he should be.
Yes. Why would you go somewhere else? Like you are going to be 1 out of 3. You'll be picked for all the power and all the positions in the church because
That's
you
right,
got
Kenny,
money.
we should rethink our decision here.
Exactly. Like,
We should sign me up to BMC.
yeah, go there. As long use your money because it gives you power. I hate to say it, it's true.
So I think multiple factors are play into that conversation. One of them is exactly what you're saying. I think that this particular brand of religion attracts the people who like control, especially control over women. It attracts those kind of people, and so they are going to. They're going to land in a place where they're given the power, right?
Right.
And
absolutely.
so that is part of the issue. And the other part of the issue is that, and you all know because you were in it, but when you're raised in it, this is the one true way. This is the one true way. This is the one true way. And a lot of people find it really, really difficult to let go of that thought process. They walk away and they leave, but they still always feel that nagging thing in their mind of, did I walk away from the one true way? And so they get kind of pulled back in because they've been so brainwashed really in that line of thinking of it cannot be any other way. And they're never able to come out of that mindset. And it stays with them forever as a kind of a weight on their shoulder.
Comes in.
I feel like that's the dangerous part of that group.
Yeah, like Mariah said, that's where it becomes cultish. And it's like, because how many people have we received messages from? I can't even list them all, but have been feeling like there's no way but that one way. And so they have to go back to that way if they want to make it to heaven, or they're bound for hell.
But it's like impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible
to follow.
Right.
Yeah. So it leaves you between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
So I've gotten, oh my goodness, we've been out of the Holiness Church for many years now, but I've gotten more private messages and text, I think probably over the last 2 years, from people from that background reaching out to me, asking the question, how in the world did you stay connected to Jesus and leave this? Because that's their biggest fear is I'm walking away from Jesus. I'm not just walking away from a church. I'm walking away from God. That's what they feel like when they walk out the door. And so they've kind of been looking, and the internet has opened some of that up. And there were a lot of rules around the internet in the beginning, especially in my part of the holiness movement. I don't know about the other parts, but there was a lot of rules around the internet. It was kind of really restricted, but they've kind of been loosening the reins over the years. And it's gotten to this point where they can see other people on Facebook like me, for instance. They've been watching me now for a few years on Facebook because they've actually finally been allowed to get Facebook. And they're looking and going, wait a minute, like it seems like she really loves Jesus. Like, wait a minute, she's a part of a church who's like loving their community, and that all looks good. What's wrong with that? You know, and it looks like, you know, like her family loves one another, and like her life didn't, you know, she's not, you know, been murdered and you know, had all these horrific things that we hear at the altar calls when they're singing softly and tenderly 25 times.
Oh my goodness. Or pass me not, O gentle Savior. Like that is a good one too. Gracious.
Yes. And so they're looking at that and they're going, wait a minute. And so it's kind of like opened up this little idea in their mind that, wait a minute, maybe I've been lied to. And so I have gotten more messages, and I firmly believe that it's because of the fact that the reins have been loosened a little bit, like as far as internet and stuff like that, and that people have just been able to see more outside of their bubble, and it's caused a lot of questions to pop up in their minds of, wait a minute, something's not right here. This doesn't add up. And I get that a lot.
Yeah, it leads to the question too. You mean you can make it outside of the holiness movement? Like you won't crash and burn? I mean, you still have a life and you're able to develop friends and you're able to like survive without a group. Like I've had messages from people saying like they almost are surprised that we're able to feed our children and be part of a life without the Holiness Church. Yeah. I mean, like I've had so many conversations like that with friends. Well,
when you think about it, when we were in that was our whole world. And so you can't imagine having a world outside of that.
Right.
I mean, it literally takes up every space in your life. They have their own schools.
Yes.
They have their own churches, and the churches, there's, a fall revival and a summer revival and a spring revival. And then there's camp meeting in the summer. And then there's this other camp meeting in the summer. And there's just meetings, and your whole social world is caught up in their circles outside of it. It is. And so they can't even imagine having a social circle outside of that. And it is intimidating to start a social circle as a 20-something-year. I was 21 when we left a church that I was raised in, that my grandfather pastored. Was 21 years old. I had already had 2 kids, had been married. I got married 6 days after I turned 17. And,
wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And because that's what... Well, there was multiple factors there. First of all, my family was full of secrets and a lot of things that were not good. And so our rules covered up a lot of yucky stuff. And I married somebody as quickly as I could to get out of my house, which is like, the greatest reason to marry somebody. I mean, that was just bright future written all over that.
Right.
And, so that was one factor. And then the other factor is I'd literally heard my whole life, that's what women do. They get married and have babies. They get married and they have babies. That is what women do. And so it fell right in line with everything that I had heard from a gazillion preachers at a gazillion revival services and camp meeting services and all of the things. And so I was just a little baby child. And we got married. I graduated from high school when I was 16, got married 6 days after I turned 17, had my first child when I was 18, had my second child when I was 21. And that is when we left that church. And so I was a 21-year-old girl starting my life over completely. And it was horribly intimidating. It is scary. I get that they have a lot of fear about it because it was terrifying. But what was even more terrifying for me at that point was staying. I had reached the point where pulling into the parking lot of the church made me physically ill. Physically ill. I would get so nauseous. And I would look at my husband's name's Matt, and I would look at him and say, I can't go in here. I can't go in here. And it was just years, first of all, of secrets. And all of the things that I'm doing, trying my best to get God to love me, just wanting him to love me and never feeling like that I could get there. And then underneath, and then you add in that layer of all of the things that I was hiding. And you add in the layer of all the standards and all the desperation of trying your best to get to God. And I was a broken mess. I look back on it now and I actually think, like, with the knowledge that I have now, I think I was probably on the verge of a nervous breakdown, but I would not have had the knowledge or understanding of that to even articulate that in any way at that time, because they don't talk about mental health at all. You just have to pray more. You're not praying enough. You're not praying enough. And so I would not have had the language to understand, even what was happening to me. But I feel that I was right there. Fortunately, my husband, the only reason we had stayed up until that point is because, honestly, my grandfather was the pastor of the church. My parents were heavily involved, obviously. My uncle, my aunt, like, my family was the church, And so he had known that if we ever left, that my family would make it really hard on me. And he just didn't know, how I would how I would handle that. And that's the reason that we had stayed as long as we had. And then when I told him, I remember the one Sunday that I told him I just can't ever go again. And he said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Because you know what your family's going to do." And I said, "Yes, I'm sure." I said, I cannot ever go there again. And we didn't. And my family did exactly what, we had thought they would do. And they were a dysfunctional, toxic mess, but they were the only thing I'd ever known. And when you're walking away from the only thing that you've ever known, it's terrifying.
Oh, my Lord, yes.
So I get all of the fear that people have about leaving. Get it 100%. But no, I absolutely did the right thing. And I'm so grateful that we made the step that we did. For sure. For sure.
We were talking about that they become like your entire social life. Miss B, and you have watched some people before try to leave. Right. But they become, it's like some of them, they don't know how to act. They don't even, because to Tracy's point, what she's saying there is where they just wrap you up completely. And even things, I've thought about this before, things that normally you use to become a part of a community, like even going to high school football games, on Friday nights, that's usually, the community gathered is in there. Well, that's a sin. If they got a local band playing somewhere, is it somebody that could be played at Stoneboro camp meeting? If not, then that's a sin.
Camargo camp. They can't go to Camargo camp, then they can't come here.
So it was just like every little thing, so a lot of restaurants, even some of the small town restaurants around here, Miss, they serve alcohol. Right. Well, the one I was with, they serve alcohol. Well, then you can't go there. That's supporting the devil. Never mind, we can all go to Walmart, but don't you dare go to Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah, I don't understand that mentality. Yeah. I don't understand that at all. Because you'll go to Walmart, but you can't go to the place where they actually have a designated area, just like Walmart, for alcoholic products. I don't understand that.
There's no reasoning when you start going down those avenues. I've tried in my brain to try to figure. It's not there. Just lay that down, girl. Yeah. You ain't ever gonna figure that
out. and I hate to be like that, but you're right. In my head, I'm kind of just think about this for one. Have an independent thought and think about it for once on your own 2 feet. And it's true. It's like the moment you start doing that and you start asking the hard questions that no one wants to ask. I mean, my goodness, that's when you get ridiculed. Like a listener we had write to us and say they've been yelled at repeatedly over and over and over just for asking a question. And it's like these questions need to be asked because these people feel like they're going to hell. They need help.
Yes. I had a guy I was just talking to a couple of days ago, and he probably, I would say he had to be getting close to 40.
Yeah.
And he was asking me questions that I was, look at me. I didn't have answers for them.
Right.
Because some of them were deep questions.
Sure.
But he told me, he said, this is the first time I've been able to ask these questions and not get yelled at. I'm like, dude, that's crazy.
That's scary because I think he has a family and he has people that he's trying to help guide to Jesus.
Is not scared of questions. Mm-hmm. Truth is not afraid of that. Yes. Truth invites that because it wants to speak truth. And it stands where it stands and it doesn't move and it's just not afraid of conversation. It's not. And anytime somebody is afraid to have a conversation with you around beliefs, that is a red flag.
Yeah,
it's just a red flag.
That's true.
It is very good.
Now that being said, I'll tell you what our next step was. So this was a very strict holiness church, right? That I was raised in, very, very strict. When we left that church, I would have, I think at that point, been comfortable to never go back to church again. I firmly believed that there was a God. I didn't have any doubt in my mind about that. I just knew that there was no way that he could love me. So I thought I was hopeless, that I was there was nothing for me, right? But we had 2 kids. And I thought maybe he might not love me, but he could possibly love my kids. And so if he could love them, I wanted them to know him, Yeah. And because to be loved by God was the thing that I wanted the most, right? So I wanted it for my kids if it was a possibility. And so we did go to another church, and the church that we went to was a holiness church. Now, mind you, there's different levels of holiness churches. There's the churches that are the really strict, you can't have internet, you can't, the girls have to wear the pantyhose all the time. And then there's those worldly churches where the girls don't have to wear pantyhose all the time. I mean, worldly ones,
Oh my goodness. You don't wear leg makeup? What?
And so we went to one of those worldly holiness churches where the girls didn't have to wear pantyhose all the time and they were allowed to wear sandals. I still, to this day, remember the first pair of sandals I ever bought. I was 21 years old. I remember every single detail of those shoes. Which, when I tell people that, they think I'm a lunatic. They're like, "You remember your first pair of sandals?" I was like, "You don't understand. This was like a highlight moment in my life." Okay,
right?
Exactly.
So I went to one of those worldly churches where you could wear open-toed shoes. That's what they call it.
Because your toes are so sexy. Like, my goodness.
And I've been fighting men off ever since, honestly.
They want a peep show of those toes, girl.
So anyway, we did go to another version of that because, and again, I look back on it now and I know that felt kind of safe to us because we were familiar with some of the language. They were very worldly compared to the church that we came out of, but it still felt comfortable. That being said, I have zero doubt in my mind that God meant for me to be at that church at that time because that pastor's wife, who is a holiness woman, she saved me. She literally saved my life. And she and her husband saved our marriage because, I got married to get out of my house. So clearly we were a very, very healthy marriage. And I had all these secrets that I wasn't telling anybody, not even my husband. So healthy, so healthy. And so we were in a bad place. And this woman, y'all, she loved me like nobody had ever loved me. And she would handwrite letters to me from her house. Like we lived in the same city and I would go out to my mailbox and I would get letters every single week from her. And then I would see her at church and she would share part of her journal and her relationship with Jesus and just open up herself very personally, very personal things. And she would share about things that she had experienced and learned about God. Very just loving and very transparent about her life and her relationship and learning to grow and to know God.
Wow.
She was amazing. She was amazing. And a few years into that, for the first time ever in my life, I was honest about some things and told her things that I had never told anybody else. Mm-hmm. And her response, I'm going to cry. I always do every time I tell this stupid story, was just to love me. And I thought, if she can know everything there is to know about me and love me, then maybe God could do the same.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And that was the very first time that I had an idea or thought in my head that God could love me. And right in the middle of that, of course, we were in some pretty extreme marriage issues because I had a lot of issues and my husband was tired of dealing with my issues and he was just done. And of course, you all know, like divorce in the holiness church is,
that's a big
never heard of.
Yep.
So for him to say to me that he wanted to divorce me, I knew he was done because we were raised, you didn't even say that word, that was like a 4-letter word. And so when he was like, he wanted to leave me. And the husband of that same lady who loved me so dearly had a conversation with him and told him, Matt, I hope you know you're doing exactly what she expects you to do. Everything about her history has taught her that men will always hurt her. And she's expecting you to do this. Now you need to do the unexpected thing. And something about that statement flipped something in Matt's mind, and he determined he was going to do the unexpected thing, and he did. And we, with a lot of help and love, were able to work through some significant issues and have just last month celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary. Wow. 29 years together, and we have 5 boys. So those people, I know that we were supposed to be there, and I know that there are good people in those churches. Yes. And I will say, this is something that I have wrestled with in my mind, honestly, over and over again, because there is so much unhealthy that is there, I think, how in the world can this be? How can there be health in the middle of unhealthy? And I don't know how that works. And I don't understand all of that.
Yeah.
But I just know that those people to this day still, and their holiness, to this day, their holiness, but they have visited Matt and I in our home, even in the current church that we are. They love us and pray for us, and they interact with us like brothers and sisters in Christ. They have never one time made us feel like, you left the holiness church, leprosy, nothing. They've never. So they are some of the people who I genuinely believe just live out their faith, and they love Jesus, and Jesus has them planted there, and that's where they're at. But they love people the way that people need to be loved, because that's how they loved me. And if it had not been for them, I know, just looking back at where I was and how broken I was, and how she when I tell my story, I tell people that she loved me to Jesus. And she did. Loved me to Jesus. Wow. And it's where I found a relationship with him. And it's where my marriage was fixed. And we ultimately ended up moving to Florida for a job for my husband. And we went to a holiness church down here after we moved here. And at that church, some things happened that reminded us of the church that I had been born and raised in. Just some control things, and we looked at each other and said, wait a minute, like, we left this. Mm-hmm. We already went through this trauma once of living through this kind of, no. And we made the decision then to completely break away from the holiness church. And so that is when we completely broke away. That was 2010. So wow. It's 12 years ago. Yeah. 12 years ago that we finally broke away from the holiness church completely.
I like why you said that she was able to love you through Jesus, because that's exactly what it is. I know there's a lady that was really important in my mom's salvation, because she said, this lady, she had TV, but let me tell you, she was a holiness woman. She knew who Jesus was, and she was able to take care of all the little things that she could, like her physical side as well as her spiritual side, and just loved her through it. And that is so important, where your statement of being, loving them on the outside, but still also loving them on the inside as well.
Just loving people, yes. Period. Just loving people where they're at, instead of, excuse me, let me measure you to see if, the skirt's exactly where it needs to be. And I'm sorry that you have all this crap that you're carrying from your childhood that was very, very difficult, but we're not going to talk about that. Let's check out the stress. Right. And that's so much of what happens there is just, you have issues. Well, you don't got enough faith. You just need to pray more.
Right.
And you are actually made to feel horrible for things that happen to you. Like your childhood, you're innocent in that, right?
Right.
You didn't ask for any of this, but somehow or the other, you're made to feel that because you're struggling because of things that you had no control over happening to you, that you're the bad guy. So it's just such a messed up situation. And I've heard more and more of it over the past few years, like I said, than I have in many years. We've been out of it for a while, and consistently I have private text messages, private messages on Instagram, on Facebook. Can I ask you a question? How did you leave?
Yeah.
Can I ask how you feel about this? Like, is this wrong? Is this, and just simple things. And it's just consistently over and over again, all of these hurting people who are terrified to ask those questions to the people in their church. Terrified to ask those kind of questions. And so they're reaching out and having those kind of conversations with me.
I think that you said that you all made the jump at about 2000 and 2010. I think 2010 was right about when I started mine. I had a long journey. That was just when I think it started crossing my mind that, some things just didn't add up and all that. But why do you think that is? I'll get your take on this. So the holiness movement, and this is sad to say, but the one that you were telling us about, the pastor's wife that just really loved you through all this and helped you out. Why are they the outliers in that movement? Is the movement just so caught up with works or with standards that, why do you think that is, that they put so much emphasis on, like you said, measuring people, and the love part's just completely gone?
Because of the emphasis, and we see it so clearly, even in the Bible. The Pharisees were the people who were supposed to be the most religious, but they had gotten so caught up in the outward appearance that it's all that they cared about. And there's a chapter in Matthew where Jesus is like on a rant against them. He calls them whitewashed tombs, full of dead men's bones. I mean, that whole chapter is nothing but, it says you would cross an ocean to save somebody and then not let them into heaven. The language, I've read it several times over the past month, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he was calling them out. But it's when religion becomes so based on appearance, it's what you're judged by. If that's what your religion is rules, how else are you going to gauge whether you're holy or not?
Right.
That's what the religion is. And so you're going to look at, are they following all the rules? That's the gauge. And people have totally, completely, because we're people, it's what we do. We end up corrupting every single religious system over time. We end up messing it up because we're people. But, because we get caught up in the way that we would do things, and we get caught up in the things that we can see, because we can see them, right? But God doesn't look at things the way that we look at them. And he looks inward in places that we can't see in people's hearts, to the real motives of their hearts. And that's what matters to him. And that's just not something that we can fully wrap our head around. We can say it, like I can articulate, God looks at the heart, but to actually think that through and think, there's no way I can know the heart of another person. I can't know that. And for somebody who wants control, I mean, right. That's terrifying. And it's just completely gotten lost in all of the rules. And over time, I mean, we've seen it. We've all seen it in the different preachers that come through. Like, how many times has a preacher come through and they've added another rule because they started preaching on this, that never was a sin until they got there. And then all of a sudden, then you have to be as holy as they are, right? And so you get the rule added to you, and it just keeps becoming this thing that just gets heaped on you. And it's always everybody else's stuff. They think this is wrong, and so you have to think it's wrong. And nobody is allowed to walk out their own personal salvation with fear and trembling. Nobody is allowed to have personal convictions. You can't have that. You have to see things the way that I see them.
Yes.
That is the biggest fault in the Holiness Church. You have to see things the way that I see them. They allow for no room. And that's why they end up having so many fractures, even among themselves. Right. Because even among themselves, this person starts thinking this way, and this person's over here going, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, and so they part ways because you don't think the way that I do. They cannot be around anybody who doesn't think the way they do.
Yeah, and split over the tiniest little things.
Exactly. You have to align in thought about everything. They leave no space for any personal relationship with God. And it is a personal relationship with God. I didn't get saved to join a church. I got saved to be in relationship with Jesus Christ.
Exactly right.
And so my relationship is with him. It is personal. Now, I love church. I lead a church. I think church is great. It was church that hurt me, And it was church that healed me. And I think that because we're humans, we mess some stuff up. And hopefully in the middle of all of that, I feel like if we listen to the voice of God, that He'll get us to the right place with the right people and get us where we need to be. I believe in church. I believe in the community that happens there. It's a good thing to have people that you're doing life with and you're cheering each other on. But if your church has an idea or thought pattern of you have to do things exactly this way, in regards to lifestyle issues of how you're dressing and that kind of stuff, and it has to be this way or you're not no, red flag. Right. If they're having to come in and draw the lines on where your clothes can end and not end and where you can eat at a restaurant or not eat at a restaurant, that's not relationship. That's just somebody telling you what to do. And if it's like that, it shouldn't be that way. Church should be community where you're cheering each other on and celebrating together and praying together when you're in rough spots and everything. It should not be, do you see her? I can see her elbow. I can see her elbow. That's not what church should be.
And people's listen, I could vouch for what Tracy's saying because I used to feel that way. And I tell you 100%, that's how I looked at things. If somebody didn't line up with me on 100% of everything, then they obviously had a big spiritual issue because I was the holy one. It's
see, you were disgusting. The problem.
I was the problem. I was one of the problems. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. I look back on it now. There's times I cringe. I'm like, oh my Lord, Phil, what was wrong with you? But
but we all kind of feel that way when we're in it, right?
Right.
Because we've been taught to think that way, so you kind of, it's a whole process to switch your mind when you get out, because you're used to automatically thinking, oh, look at them. I can see her clavicle. I mean, she's a whore. And that's just how your brain works, because it's how, and so to make yourself think a different way, it's difficult.
And you talk about these extra rules that they put on too. I've ranted on this before, I think, but I just heard another instance of it the other day, and it aggravates me so bad. So what they'll do is they'll take a rule. So let's say like wedding rings. They love to preach on wedding rings. And they'll say that that's a sin. That's not a sin. That's nowhere near a sin.
Right.
But they'll say that's a sin. So then I heard a preacher the other day, and he was talking about, he was preaching, he said, want to let you know that you can graduate high school and not have a class ring, and you can stay married and not have a wedding ring. And then he would go on to say stuff like, I'll even venture to guess that people that don't have wedding rings, that their marriages last longer. I'm like, okay.
No proof behind
facts,
that.
Please. But
right.
Of course, we know, how we, why should I think they'd use facts for an argument like that? But so then he goes,
I'm going to need a BARDA study that substantiates that claim.
Oh yeah.
Right.
But instead, you just pull those numbers out. So, and then he said that there was a young couple in his church. He said they were trying to live so close to the world that they started tying strings around their fingers instead of it. So I thought, dude, you're literally preaching on string. You went from you preached on wedding rings, not a sin, to now you're preaching on string because you put it in the same, you tied it around your finger and all of a sudden it's a sin. I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you people?
Well, and like, there was, and I'm just gonna bring it up because we talked about it, and I'm not trying to offend the person that we have a listener who really thinks highly of this person, and I'm going to refrain from even saying who it was, but there was someone in BMC leadership who said that if they're not with us, they're against us.
Talking specifically about TV and internet.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. And that's where this whole idea of if they're not 100% with us, then they're against us comes from, because that's what they're teaching us.
Yeah.
They have
that is that line of thought of you have to think like I do.
Yep.
Exactly.
You have to think like I do.
And here's where I really think that this stuff warrants even public critique, because I listened to a sermon by R.C. Sproul one time. Shocking. Ooh, Phil's listened to Calvinists. On this message, he was very good. I really liked him. And he was talking about legalism, and he talked about how the Apostle Paul got so upset at Peter because Peter was requiring circumcision of some of the newer Christians. And it's in the book of Galatians somewhere. I don't remember exactly where. But it says, Paul said, I confronted him to his face in front of everybody that was there. And basically clumb all over him for adding to what it took to be a Christian. Uh-huh. And so my opinion is, if it was being added to because somebody was trying to enforce circumcision, what is requiring that, you can't show your clavicle, or you can't wear a wedding ring, or you can't have short sleeve, your elbows can't show.
I can't have a string on my finger to remind me that I'm married.
What is that doing?
I mean,
if you're not a member, a Christian in good standing,
right?
Because you don't do those extra biblical things, well, I see no difference. Yeah. And what Paul got mad at and what these guys do today.
Well, and if anything, he handled it like in public in front of everybody. That way you can be like, he got upset with me in private. He didn't. No, we went directly to the source, which is how we should be handling it. If you have a problem with someone, it's not like we're trying to do he said, she said thing, because I get sick of that. I really do. Just go directly to the source and be like, okay, I heard this. Is this because I had a situation today come up and I was like, I heard this and I need to know, did this actually happen? And this person was like, yes, it did. And they were able to tell me their side of the story. And I agree with their side of the story. I hate to say it. I saw both sides of it and I was like, yes, exactly.
And the truth probably actually lies somewhere in the middle of that.
Sure.
Because usually that's the way that it rolls. But this is another little piece that that is definitely an issue. People do not know how to have conversations anymore where there's disagreement. Like we run from that.
I know.
We absolutely run from that. We don't know how to disagree. We think of disagreement as we see that as unhealthy. Yep. Where actually disagreement it creates conversation. You get to talk around some issues and both sides get to explain and you get to it can actually be a really beautiful part of communication, but we do not know how to do that anymore. We don't know how to disagree with one another. We don't know how to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing that needs to be taught.
We definitely don't know how to do that in the Holiness Church.
Right.
Exactly.
A disagreement is not allowed. It's not allowed in there. So
whether you're Democrat, whether you're Republican, whether you're independent, it does not matter. Even like with politics.
Right.
Like
exactly.
There is no one sitting there. Like at least our founding fathers, they would sit behind in their desks and start screaming at each other. At least they were talking. People don't even want to talk now.
I know, but then they knew the context of that. Like they would walk outside of that room after they had their little, argument about the Constitution, and then they would run down probably to the little tavern on the corner and have a sandwich and some beer.
They went to Samuel Adams Brewery. That's exactly where they went. Samuel Adams Brewery.
Exactly. We all know that's exactly how it happened.
Right.
But we know that they were able to leave it in that room. People knew like the context of things. Like this is in here, and then out here we can have a conversation. Like you don't have to see everything like me for me to have a conversation with you, for me to be a part of your life, for me to interact with you. You don't have to think the way that I do. People do not have that concept anymore in their head. Everybody is like, oh, well, you don't agree with me? Well, I'm out.
Yeah, we can't be friends because you don't agree that the sky is a perfect shade of teal. I mean, like, come on.
And I don't agree with that. So I don't know if we're going to be able to continue this conversation.
Right. Where does that come from? Because I don't understand.
Well, I know when David Graff was on, when he was talking about how he pushes back against the the idea of the second work and all that.
Right.
And David Graff does seem to enjoy debate. He's good at it.
Yes.
I'll get to reading some of his Facebook wars he gets in, and he does it well. It's not like he's just slinging mud. He does it well. He does it.
He's done his research.
He's kind of an academic, and he does his research and all that.
Yep.
But he said, I don't know of debates on this. He said, I can't find them. I want to hear them.
Right.
But I can't find them. In fact, he said there was he told the story about that there was some kind of a forum or something these people were going to have, and it was put on by a holiness outfit, and it was going to be about the second work of grace, and so he wanted, of course, to partake in it.
Right.
And they said, yeah, you can join as soon as you sign this paper saying that you fully agree with the second work of grace. And he's like,
wait a minute. I don't think y'all understand what a debate is.
I know. He's like, no, I can't sign this. That's why I'm here.
Right.
We're going to debate or not? It's debate is just not present. It's not there
going back to that control thing, though. They were trying to control everybody that was coming in and what they thought.
Right.
So that's on their end of things. It's a control thing. And then from an outward perspective, I would say that these kinds of things haven't got talked about as much as they should have over the years. Because the people who do come out, either number one, feel so damaged by everything that they experience that they struggle with that damage for the rest of their life. And I have a lot of friends who have done exactly that.
Yeah.
They've just struggled so much, just in multiple different areas because of all of the baggage that they have from church. And so they don't even feel strong enough to have a conversation about it because they're so broken. And then you've got people who just completely are done with church. I'm done. I don't even want to have a conversation about it. I don't want to have anything to do with church ever again.
Right.
And then you've got people like me who went on to develop a good relationship with God, a healthy relationship with God, and actually moved on. And my husband and I are in ministry. And I will be honest with you all, I've been super cautious up until about the last year of my life when addressing anything about my history in detail. I was clear that I went through some difficulty and that kind of thing, but I never really dug down into how much it was connected to the church that I was raised in and that kind of thing. I was ambiguous about that. And I struggled with, because I am in ministry, I don't want to go around slamming other ministries. That's not like, because I love the church. I actually love the church. And so to have this conversation was extremely difficult for me because it feels like in some way that I'm harming the church and everything within me doesn't want to do that. It does not want to do that. The issue that I've come up against, though, that has brought that over the last year, I've been more vocal, I think, than I've ever been in my life, and continue to plan to be that way, is that the amount of people that I'm having conversations with who are so completely broken, who are so completely confused, who are so completely damaged, and it's just a mess. And it's, at what point do we, how long do we let this go before we start saying, like,
Absolutely.
This is unhealthy. This is unhealthy, and it shouldn't be this way. And I'm not saying that, I had to understand within my own mind, I'm not saying that church is wrong. I'm saying church handled in that way is wrong.
Yes.
Right.
I feel like that any church is going to have healthy and unhealthy people in it. And so because unhealthy people are in it, and because people are in it in general, and we're not going to get things right. We're people. We just always manage to do the stupid thing. So because we're involved, it's never going to be perfect. And there are going to be church hurts that happened, and nobody's ever going to get it exactly right. But it should not be that people have to recover from church. Like their hurt should be that, she talked to me in a weird voice. I don't know if she's mad at me, versus I feel completely broken inside. I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown, like it was when I left the church. That's two completely different things.
Yes.
And so just getting there in my own head, and I feel like that there's a lot of people who are in that same boat, like they're Christians. They actually have a healthy relationship with Jesus. They're either a part of church, or they've went on to become ministry minded in some way and involved in volunteering at a church or leading in a church. And they don't want to say anything because you don't want to say anything against the church. We love the church. And so we don't say anything because we don't want to hurt the name of the church. But at some point you have to step back and go, what's happening over here is so completely unhealthy that it cannot keep continuing without somebody saying, wait a minute, something's wrong here. It shouldn't be this way. People should not have to recover from church. It should be the place that you go to recover. It should be the place where you go and get help and hope and all of the good things. It just shouldn't be the way that it is. And there's so much of that. And it's becoming just, again, I think it's because of the internet just being a lot more, out there, and everything that people can communicate more easily without everybody knowing, like the people that are messaging me. Nobody knows that they message me, right. It's a secret. But it's opened up a lot of doors for people to be able to have a lot of communication and see things that are outside of their little bubble. And they're asking a lot of questions. Wait a minute. It doesn't have to be this way. Somebody can go on and, still, stay married. Like, I thought everybody else at the Holiness Church got divorced the next day, because that's just what happens, right? Yeah. And just all of the things that you hear, all of the horror stories. Oh my gosh, I remember one teacher, one sermon talking about a guy who got murdered. This is the whole, softly and tenderly thing. And, it's the whole murder scenario. And he was decapitated, and they wrote red rum across the wall. And the whole time softly and tenderly is going on in the background. And they're telling you that that's what's going to happen if you leave. That's what they're saying. It's no wonder that we all believe that stuff, because my goodness, it was fear-driven into us.
Yes, it was.
Fear-driven into
spiritual
us.
trauma.
Yeah.
I can still remember standing there at Clinton Camp, and even at night, it was like 87 degrees, and standing there, softly and tenderly is on about, the 26th go around, and they're just telling all these stories like that. I'm like, I don't want to get murdered and have somebody write on me.
Okay, I will go back to the altar for the 590th time.
Yes, indeed.
Because I don't want that to happen to me. Oh my goodness. At some point you have to be able to say, this isn't the way that it should be. And the other thing, I think that's causing me a lot of concern at this point, because we're in the big, deconstruction fad. Everybody's deconstructing. Uh-huh. And you hear everybody talking about it all the time. And I deconstructed back when it wasn't cool. But in the middle of all of this, because it's kind of the thing right now, I feel like that a lot of people are getting lost in that. They're coming out of this, and they're not finding any kind of healthy conversation around these kinds of things. And so they're getting lost in a lot of other conversations and getting pulled away from the church completely, right. which I hate, and I don't want that to happen. And so we've got to start talking about these things so that the people who are experiencing them can know there's a safe place to talk about this. Yeah. And you can walk away from that and have a relationship with Jesus, and you can have a healthy relationship with Jesus and a healthy relationship with your spouse and with your kids, and with, you can build a good, godly life outside of the Holiness Church. I know that they're screaming at you that you can't, but you can. So I just have to get that off my chest.
That's exactly what I was. That's exactly what I was hoping we could get across to people tonight, because I do feel, and yeah, like you say, it's it's cool to deconstruct at the moment, but I have no desire to point people towards, okay, leave the church and then just sit there, and sometimes I feel like I'm not very good at getting across to what you just said, especially in the way that you just said it. It's there is a life after the holiness movement,
and it's a life that can include a good, real, healthy relationship with God.
Yes,
it absolutely can. And the thing that, just in case there's anybody who's out there listening who's going, so I'm one of those people that are, just getting ready to chunk the whole thing. And I don't want to, and some of the first things that we tend to say to people who are in that phase of, I just don't want to have anything to do with church anymore. I don't want to. Well, what you need to do is you need to read such and such chapter in the Bible. Well, they're Bibled out. They're just Bibled out. And so it actually makes them like break out in hives a little bit. The thought of, picking up their Bible, it actually can stress them out because they've had so much trauma connected with that. If there's anybody out there who's thinking, just what would be my next step if I wanted to know who God is, like really know who God is, but not have to go to a church service, because I can't go to a church service right now. Those people just stress me out. I tell people to watch the Alpha series. You can watch it on YouTube. It's free.
The Alpha series. Okay.
Alpha series.
Alpha series.
And it's just basic conversation about who Jesus is, and about the Bible and the accuracy of the Bible. And it's all very well done. And it's, again, just basic conversation in a video format that is very engaging and very informative. So if you're right there of like, where do I go? What should my next step be? I actually do want to know about God, but I don't want to go to church right now. Watch the Alpha series. You can Google it. You can find it on YouTube. And it's a whole series of videos. There's like 12 videos. And the very first one start talking about like who Jesus is. And it is just a good starting point of thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to give myself a blank slate in my head of everything I've ever been told. I'm just going to lay all of that aside. And I know that's hard. And it's not going to be something that you do in 1 second or 1 day or 1 minute.
Right.
But just tell yourself that for just a minute. I'm going to lay aside everything that I've been told, and I'm just going to start right here and watch that and let that be your beginning. What I hate about people who are doing the deconstructing thing is they're literally walking out of church and they're going and looking at all of these other ways of belief.
Right.
And they're not really examining Christianity because they feel like they know everything about it, right? I've been raised in church.
Yeah.
I've been to 500 million church services. I can quote you the whole book of Psalms. Like you feel like you know everything there is to know about it. And so you literally do no digging.
Yeah.
In regards to the Bible, because you feel like you know it all.
Right.
So you're running out here looking at this religion and the no religion and the stars, and studying astrology and, just all of these other things, because you already know everything there is to know about Christianity, but you don't. You know what they wanted you to know about Christianity. And so I want people to know, wait a minute. There's a better way. And you can actually know Jesus and have a healthy view of him and understand that he loves you. And
Absolutely.
that's what I want for people, is for people to not walk when they're doing the deconstruction thing, just walk out and be like, okay, I know everything there is to know about religion. No, you don't. You know everything there is. They've told you. They know you. Everything they've told you. And like 95% of what they told you is a lie. So
I love the way you put it, Tracy.
Yes.
I love the way you put it.
Because it is true. That whole relationship with Jesus is not something that's really taught. I was blessed, but to be able to have parents who have a personal relationship with Jesus. And so that's why I knew about it. But when I was coming back to the States, it was all about the outward appearance, and it was never really about what did God tell you? What is personal for you? What did the Bible say about certain situations? It was in order to have that relationship, you have to have both sides of it. He has to talk to you, and you have to talk to him, like he talks to us in his word. And so without having that communication and that relationship, we're just basically going along with what someone says and living off their relationship with God. Yeah. And it's not personal. And that's why we wonder why our kids are not serving Jesus. We were just having a conversation about that. But holiness kids. Like, we wonder why holiness kids are not sticking around.
They just dip out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's because they've learned that they have to look the part. And we all know that, first of all, that's unsatisfying. Looking the part is not actually being the part, right? Yes. We know that. And then number two, again, we'll go back to what I said earlier. This kind of religious system attracts all of the people who want control. Yep. And so half of those kids are in homes with parents who are really bad people. Yeah. And it's all covered up with a long dress and with a hair pulled straight back and with a guy in a, 3-piece suit that is black and not any tie at all, or either it's a black tie. And, all of that kind of stuff. Like you look the part. And so we know how fake all that is. But they're raised in the look. Like, if I can get the look right, because if you get the look right, my family, my goodness, there were awful things happening in my family, but we looked the part.
Yeah. That's all that really matters.
It's just, that's all that matters. So it's unfulfilling to look the part, and it's not real. That's not a real, and it attracts all of the people who are crazy. It attracts crazy people.
Yeah, and the ones that are in for it the wrong reasons.
Yeah, for the wrong reason.
Because there are, like you said, good people. There are some wonderful people. And I know, and I'm going to bring him up. So go ahead and ring that bell, Phil. But Dr. Graham, he has decided.
There's Andrew Graham mentioned for the week.
There's Dr. Graham. He has decided that he wants to stick with the holiness movement and make that his ministry. And we were talking about how, are we too aggressive with how we're addressing certain issues? But for us, it's because we are going after the people that are broken and hurting. And like going back to your comment, you felt like you didn't want to hurt the church. And that is not our goal either at all, because we are trying to make it to heaven. We are trying to do the best that we can. But we're still going to be human. We're still going to make mistakes, but we still need to be putting out there that there is someone who loves them. Not like Jesus loves them and we love them. And so we're trying to bring those and let them know that there is a better way.
And to say that, you have to say that's not the way.
Yes.
That's not accurate.
Exactly.
That's not right.
Correct.
And when people are being hurt the way that they are in some of these systems, just the amount of shame, the amount of confusion that people, it is okay to say it should not be that way. It's okay. And I had to just come to grips with that in my own head.
Right.
It's okay to say that, Tracy. You're not harming, you're not hurting Jesus by saying that, people shouldn't be walking out of churches severely emotionally damaged. It's okay to say that it should not be that way.
Yeah, that's a weird one to finally, I think when I finally got to the spot to where I could say that, because for a while you're just kind of like, well, I disagree with them on a lot until finally I find myself, I'm like, nope, that ain't right, guys. That ain't right at all. What's going on over there? I don't want to keep you too long. I greatly appreciate you coming on. You've done exactly what I hoped you would, and really laid out a beautiful case here for why you don't have to throw Jesus away just because you decide to, throw the CHM away.
Well, that's the goal. I hope that if anything else was heard out of this tonight, I hope that people hear that you can know Jesus. You can know Jesus, and you can walk away from the CHM and you can know Jesus. You don't have to stay in a place where you're confused. You don't have to stay in a place where you're being hurt. You don't have to stay there. You can leave that, and you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
And I feel like as well, like you talked about a lot of things that the internet's really helping us along. So, it's a lot easier now to find other people of like mind to kind of get some support from as well, instead of just because they're probably going to swing at you. They're going to take some swings at you.
Oh yeah.
But there's a bunch of us out here now, so we can all lean off each other a little bit.
I've reached the point now where it literally makes zero difference to me about the things that said about me within the CHM. I would, it just, and there's people that I talk to who have been out of it longer than I have, who still struggle with that. So I realize that I really am like blessed to be able to have that mindset, because it makes zero difference to me. And I don't mean that in a nasty way of I don't care about them, but their thoughts about who I am and my relationship with God and that kind of thing, it's just has no bearing on my life whatsoever. I know the truth, And so when you're in a healthy relationship with God, other people telling you that you're not makes zero difference to you, you know?
Yes, indeed. That's a good place to be.
You just keep talking. I'm just going to be over here loving Jesus and loving people.
Yep. A wonderful place to be. I find it a lot more peaceful these days. I really do. I'm not kidding. Miss, do you have anything else to add? I know you're over there bouncing that little sucker up and down, but you got anything else that you want to add before we shut her down here?
No, I think I'm good. Sorry.
Lance has been particularly heinous this evening, hasn't he? Tracy, if anybody's down in the Florida area, give us a name at church again if they want to stop in and go to church with you.
Christ Fellowship Okeechobee. Come to Christ Fellowship Okeechobee.
Christ Fellowship Okeechobee. I like it.
Come visit us anytime. Yeah. And thank you so much for inviting me on and just giving me an opportunity to tell people that they can know Jesus.
That's what it's all about.
That's good stuff. I like it. Well, I feel like, we're like-minded hick people, right?
Yes,
people.
exactly right.
To get to know you a little bit better.
Yes. That's one of the things I like about this podcast is I'm talking to people that I've never met a day in my life, but we have so many things in common because of the church movement or whatever you want to call it that we were a part of. And so I've really been enjoying that, getting to know people like Tracy and Texas Ben. He knows who he is. I don't have to say his name. And John, who's the one that hates that when I don't say names? Give me John Baker. I'll say your name, John Baker. Tracy, thank you very much again. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, bye, y'all.
Bye.